The Guardian of Nkyim Village. Nkyim was not like any other village. Nestled deep in the heart of an ancient forest, it was a place where the boundaries between the living world and the realm of spirits often blurred. The trees surrounding the village whispered forgotten names, and the river that ran nearby never made a sound. People in the village knew there were unseen forces at work, but few dared to speak of them. For 16-year-old Kwabena, the village had always been home, but it was a home tinged with sorrow. Orphaned at birth, he had been raised by the village elders, none of whom spoke of his parents. They offered him food, shelter, and clothes, but there was always a cold distance, as though Kwabena's presence reminded them of something they preferred to forget. Kwabena was no stranger to loneliness. The children his age avoided him, whispering rumors that he was cursed, marked by the spirits. He would spend his days wandering the edges of the village, exploring the dense forest that encircled Nkyim. It was in these quiet moments that Kwabena felt most at peace, but little did he know that the forest held secrets far older and darker than he could ever imagine. One evening, just before the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie orange glow over the village, Kwabena found himself deep in the forest, farther than he had ever gone before. The trees here were ancient, their roots twisting and gnarled, their branches reaching toward the sky as if pleading with unseen gods. He heard a rustling in the distance, followed by a strange humming sound that seemed to vibrate in his bones. Driven by curiosity, Kwabena followed the sound. The forest darkened around him, and soon, the only light came from the faint glow of fireflies flitting through the underbrush. After what felt like hours, he stumbled into a clearing he had never seen before. At the center stood a towering baobab tree, its massive trunk wrapped in thick vines, its roots spreading out like fingers grasping the earth. The tree was ancient, older than anything Kwabena had ever seen, and there was something deeply unsettling about it. As he approached, the humming grew louder, filling his head with a strange melody. Kwabena reached out to touch the tree, and as his fingers brushed the rough bark, the ground beneath him shifted. A low rumble echoed through the clearing, and the earth split open before him, revealing a hidden passage that descended deep into the ground. Heart pounding, Kwabena hesitated for a moment. He knew he should turn back, that this was no place for a mortal to tread, but something deep inside urged him forward. He took a deep breath and stepped into the darkness. The passage was narrow, the walls cold and damp. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth. As Kwabena descended deeper, he could feel a presence watching him, though he saw no one. At the end of the passage, he emerged into a cavern illuminated by a soft, otherworldly glow. At the center of the cavern stood a stone pedestal, and on it rested a small, intricately carved wooden mask. The mask seemed to pulse with energy, its surface etched with symbols Kwabena didn't recognize. He felt an overwhelming urge to touch it, to take it. As his hand hovered above the mask, a voice echoed through the cavern. "Beware, child. The burden you seek to carry is not yours to bear." Kwabena froze, his heart racing. He looked around but saw no one. The voice was old, ancient, and filled with power. He swallowed hard and spoke, his voice trembling. "Who are you?" the voice responded, softer this time. "I am the guardian of Nkyim, the spirit bound to this land. For centuries, I have watched over the village, protecting it from the forces that seek to destroy it. But my power is fading, and soon the village will be left defenseless." Kwabena stepped back, his mind racing. "Why me? What does this have to do with me?" The voice sighed, a sound like wind rustling through leaves. "You are not like the others, Kwabena. You are tied to the spirit world in ways you cannot yet understand. Your parents, they were taken because of this connection. They sought to protect you from the fate that awaits you, but now you must choose." Kwabena's heart ached at the mention of his parents. He had never known them, but the loss had always been a part of him. Now, standing in this ancient cavern, he felt the weight of their absence more than ever. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The voice paused for a moment, then spoke with a solemnity that chilled Kwabena to his core. Take the mask. Wear it. You will become the guardian of Nkyim, but know this. Once you take on this role, you will never be the same. The spirits will speak through you, and your life will no longer be your own. Kwabena hesitated. The mask seemed to pulse with energy, as though it were alive. He knew that once he put it on, there would be no turning back. But something inside him, a deep, unshakable instinct, told him this was his destiny. He reached out and took the mask. As soon as his fingers touched it, a wave of energy surged through him, filling his body with warmth and power. He placed the mask over his face, and in an instant, the world around him changed. The cavern disappeared, replaced by a vision of Nkyim village. But it was not the village Kwabena knew. It was a vision of the past, long before he was born. He saw his parents, standing at the edge of the forest, speaking with a figure cloaked in shadow. They were arguing, their faces tense with fear and anger. The figure raised a hand, and in an instant, his parents were gone, swallowed by darkness. Kwabena cried out, but the vision shifted again. Now, he saw the village as it was today, but it was under siege. Dark creatures, twisted and malformed, swarmed through the streets, their eyes glowing with malice. The villagers fought back, but they were outnumbered, overwhelmed, and then he saw himself. He stood at the center of the village, the mask glowing with a bright golden light. He raised his hand, and the creatures recoiled, hissing in fear. The light from the mask grew brighter, enveloping the village, driving the darkness away. The vision faded, and Kwabena found himself back in the cavern, the mask still on his face. He felt different, stronger, but also burdened by the weight of what he had seen. The voice spoke again, softer this time. You have seen what is to come. The village will fall if you do not act. But remember, the power of the mask is not without cost. You will be forever changed, bound to the spirits and their will. Kwabena nodded, the weight of his responsibility settling over him like a heavy cloak. He knew what he had to do. He turned and made his way back through the passage, the mask still glowing softly in the dim light. When he emerged from the forest, the village was quiet, the sun having long since set. But there was an unease in the air, a sense that something was coming. Kwabena could feel it, the darkness lurking at the edges of the forest, waiting for its chance to strike. He walked through the village, the mask hidden beneath his cloak. The villagers looked at him with curiosity, but none dared to approach. They still feared him, still saw him as the cursed orphan. But soon they would understand. Soon they would see that he was their protector, their guardian. As Kwabena reached the center of the village, he stopped and looked up at the sky. The stars were beginning to appear, twinkling like distant spirits watching over the world. He took a deep breath and removed the mask from beneath his cloak. The golden light flared to life, illuminating the village square. The villagers gasped, their eyes wide with fear and awe. Kwabena stepped forward, the mask in his hand, and spoke with a voice that was no longer just his own. I am the guardian of Nkyim. I will protect this village from the darkness, but I cannot do it alone. Stand with me, and together we will drive back the evil that seeks to destroy us. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, one by one, the villagers stepped forward, their faces filled with determination. Kwabena smiled beneath the mask. He was no longer alone. Together, they would fight. Together, they would protect the village. And as the first shadow crept from the forest, Kwabena raised the mask to his face, ready to fulfill his destiny. The battle that followed was fierce. The creatures from the vision emerged from the shadows, their grotesque forms twisting through the trees and charging at the village. But Kwabena was ready. With the power of the mask, he summoned the spirits of the forest to aid him. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the voices of the ancestors, who lent their strength to the village's defenders. The villagers, inspired by Kwabena's courage, fought with everything they had. Men, women, and children alike took up arms, their fear giving way to a fierce determination. The creatures howled and hissed as they were driven back, their dark forms dissolving into smoke as the light from Kwabena's mask engulfed them. But the battle was not over. As the last of the twisted creatures faded into the night, a deep guttural growl echoed through the forest. From the shadows, a figure emerged, towering over the trees, its form shrouded in darkness. This was no mere minion of the evil forces. This was their leader, a being of ancient malice that had long been sealed away by the spirits. Kwabena felt the weight of the mask grow heavier as the dark figure approached. The power of the spirits surged through him, but he knew that even with their aid, this final foe would be the greatest challenge yet. The villagers, battered but unbroken, gathered behind him. They looked to Kwabena, their new guardian, with hope in their eyes. He raised the mask to his face once more, its golden light cutting through the shadows, casting the village in an ethereal glow. The figure snarled, its eyes burning with hatred as it lashed out at Kwabena. But the young guardian stood firm, channeling the spirit's strength into a shield of light that deflected the attack. He countered, summoning the wind to whip through the trees, uprooting the darkness that clung to the forest like a shroud. As the battle raged, Kwabena felt the spirits guiding him, showing him glimpses of the figure's past, a powerful sorcerer who had sought to bend the spirits to his will, only to be cast out and imprisoned in the shadows. Now he sought vengeance, not just on Nkyim, but on the entire world. With a final, desperate surge of power, Kwabena called upon the ancestors one last time. The ground trembled as the spirits themselves rose from the earth, their forms shimmering like mist, their voices a chorus of strength and resolve. The dark figure roared in fury, but it was no match for the combined might of Kwabena and the spirits of Nkyim. In a blinding flash of light, the figure was consumed, its form dissolving into the night like smoke carried away by the wind. Silence fell over the village. The battle was won, but Kwabena knew the cost. The power of the mask, though great, had forever bound him to the spirit world. He would never again be just Kwabena, the orphan boy. He was now the guardian of Nkyim, protector of the village, and the vessel of the spirits. As dawn broke over the horizon, Kwabena stood at the edge of the forest, the mask still glowing faintly in his hand. The villagers gathered around him, their faces filled with gratitude and respect. He had saved them, but in doing so, had sacrificed his own freedom. Kwabena looked out over the village he had sworn to protect, his heart heavy but resolute. The darkness had been driven away for now, but he knew it would one day return, and when it did, he would be ready. For he was no longer just a boy, he was the guardian of Nkyim, and with the spirits at his side he would face whatever came next.